Welcome to episode 4. I am so excited. In September, I'm going to be hosting my first day-long retreat. So up until this point, I've done workshops and women's circles, and this is my first time that I get to host my own full day-long retreat here in Colorado. And I want to spend today taking you on a journey of how I think about setting up and planning and facilitating a retreat or a healing workshop, or even healing in my clinic in my one-on-one work. And the reason that I want to share this is because I want you to understand how healing happens, like what in our world, what in our environment, what in our spaces help facilitate healing so that you can create this for yourself sometimes, right? When we talk about our life being the medicine, that is taking time to reconnect to our bodies, to put our bodies in spaces that facilitate rest, that facilitate reconnection, that facilitate healing. And healing has to happen on different levels. We have our physical body and our nervous system, which is very deeply connected to healing. We have our emotions, we have our thoughts, and the way that our thoughts can either promote healing or well-being or work against us, and our spiritual lives, our spiritual selves, and whether our life and the way that we're living is in alignment with what our heart and soul really desire. And so part for me, what I teach, what I practice, what I believe is that healing spaces and healing retreats or workshops or courses are really important because they allow us to step away from our lives briefly, re-see ourselves and re-see what we need. When we're kind of going through life and we just keep going and we just keep going, sometimes when we pause and we step back, we can see things differently. We can see what's working, what isn't working, what we're missing. We can tune into our emotions. We can tune into our nervous system and really ask questions about whether we're living in alignment with our values or with our heart and soul's desires. And so healing spaces and healing retreats can be profound because they allow us to step away and they allow us to re-see things that we don't always see in our everyday life. And yes, it is lovely if you can do a day retreat or a several day retreat, but an hour or 2 hour workshop can have really meaningful shifts and really meaningful restorative benefits. And if you can't do that, creating a healing space in your home or a healing place that you can go to at work, even if it's just 5 minutes or even sometimes 2 minutes, can re-regulate our nervous system, can kind of put us in a different state. And so we can return our body to a healthier physiologic state and then also allow ourselves to move forward differently. So we can be in a stressful situation. We can be, my own example is if I get overstimulated or anxious or overwhelmed, sometimes if I keep trying to do the same thing, then I just stay sort of overwhelmed and I'm not very productive. And so I have learned that if I can go outside and go for a walk, even if it's a 10-minute walk, very intentionally slow down. And so it's not like the speed walk where I just match the pace of my overwhelmed thoughts that are running in a loop, but really slowing down and starting to pay attention to what is outside my body, pay attention to the trees, to the neighbor's house, to the animals down the street. If I can start to pay attention and use the structure and nature around me, I can shift what's happening in my body. And then when I come back to the same work, to the same room, I come back with a different capacity. And that's how we create a different life. And that's how we create a different state in our bodies so that we're healthier, so that we're over and over shifting things towards health and well-being. So with that, I want to tell you kind of how I think about and how I've been thinking about this retreat that I'm doing, and also how I planned my clinic space at Healing with Intention here in Loveland. And the first thing for me is truly the space. Like, what does the space look like? And so the physical space. And one of the things that I like to think out about is what I call sacredness of place. And there are places in nature, places like Sedona, where there is deep, powerful healing energy naturally, and people go there. And there are places that as people go there over and over in time, the sacredness is cultivated, it's created, it's nourished. And that is in part because of how we show up, because people are going there with their hopes, with their pain, with their grief, with their fears, with their love, and they are releasing it and letting it go and holding it in that land and in that space. And one of my favorite quotes is from Thich Nhat Hanh. I have this hanging in my clinic. And it says, when we walk like we are rushing, we print anxiety and sorrow on the earth. We have to walk in a way that we only print peace and serenity on the earth. Be aware of the contact between your feet and the earth. Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. So when you think about sacred spaces that people are coming for healing or for spiritual purposes, we are approaching with reverence. We are not as often taking our hurry and our overwhelm and walking into those spaces with that energy. And so when we come together in healing spaces, whether it be a yoga studio or whether it be a retreat center, you get to feel the energy that is cultivated there from years and years of practice and of healing. And it can really support us. It can add to the experience. The second thing I like to pay attention to is nature. For me, having nature be a part of healing work is essential. I am not someone that can imagine healing without some connection to nature. And that's who I am, and that's my experience, and that is my deep connection. And part of my spirituality is this connection to nature and to the energy of everything in nature. And so when I think about healing spaces, I really want to bring nature into those healing spaces. You can see I have this beautiful flower behind me. Created my clinic space, when I created Healing with Intention, I really wanted the energy in my rooms and in my office to be grounded in nature. And especially I wanted to bring in the elements. I wanted to bring in earth energy. I wanted to bring in water energy. I wanted to bring in metal. I wanted to bring in air. And so I have feathers, I have metal flowers, I have plants, I have wooden tables and pieces of wood, and I have pictures with water, and I have a fountain because I wanted those elements of nature to be part of the container that I sit in when I work with clients. And when I think about creating a retreat, nature has to be part of it because we can connect to something much bigger with ourselves than ourselves in nature. And nature also helps us to co-regulate. It's much harder to be stressed out when you're sitting in a beautiful natural environment. It it automatically helps your nervous system regulate. It may not get you all the way there. It may be that whatever is going on inside is more powerful than the surroundings, but it helps. It helps support you. When we can't be in nature, and I really am excited to have people be in nature and come back inside and be in nature and come back inside. But when we can't be in nature, we can at least call it in energetically. We can ask nature and the elements to be with us. The, the other thing I think about in terms of the setting, in terms of the where we are doing healing work, is really the container. And I think about the container as the energetic container that's being held. And that is somewhat set up by clear expectations about the healing work that's happening, and by boundaries, and by being explicit about what is and isn't okay in a particular space. But I also think it is created by the physical space, by that nature, and to me, I think of it as sort of an energetic basket. And that container is what supports you to do healing work, because you have to feel safe in order to allow yourself to connect deeply to emotion and to pain and to love and to anything vulnerable. And if you don't feel safe in a container or a physical space, then it's much harder to do healing work. And so the outer layer to me is the physical space and how it's set up, and the connection to nature and the energy, like what has been done in that space before. And is it healing work or that sacredness that we talked about or not? And then that inner layer is the energetic container that I, as a facilitator or a healer, the group co-creates together. And I think of this as sort of an energetic basket of light that holds us. And oftentimes we talk about opening sacred space, and that's partly creating that container that we will be in and do healing work in, and ask the earth and the spiritual world and whatever else calls to you to hold us in that container. So that's what I think about it in terms of healing spaces. And again, for a retreat or a workshop, it's very different than being in my clinic room, but it's the same principles of how do I create a nature-connected environment where you feel safe so that you can go deeply within. And this is part of why one of my struggles when I worked in conventional medicine is even doing palliative care work and wanting people to go very deeply into their pain and into their story. If we're sitting in a clinic room with an exam table that is sterile and brings up all the memories of every uncomfortable thing that's happened to them in a doctor's office, we don't have the safety to really let people drop in. And so I created my own space because that's what I wanted. I wanted to have the environment support people dropping into their healing. So if you're going to create your own space, I want you to think about a space that feels safe, a space that feels contained, where you feel like you have control of what's coming in and out of the space energetically, sound-wise, people-wise, pet-wise, kid-wise. You want a contained space to do healing work. And then bringing in elements of nature and bringing in pieces that speak to you. Now I want to talk about the how of healing work in some of these environments and the way that I think about it. And I already talked a little bit about it, of my understanding of healing, having worked with people for over 10 plus years now, is that we have to, and I should also say it's very much informed by my own healing journey and what has helped me the most over years, is that we have to address imbalances or dis-ease on multiple different levels. And so there's a cognitive level that has both the thoughts that help us and the thoughts that don't help us. Meaning, and I love the quote of, and I don't remember where it's from, but with your thoughts, are you sort of watering the flowers or are you watering the weeds? Like, are you having repetitive thoughts that bolster you, that motivate you, that connect you to your worth, that are founded in self-love? Or are you having critical thoughts that are a constant narrative of what you're not doing right, or why something isn't going to work, or why you're never going to get what you want? Also, in part of that are some of the deeply ingrained beliefs that we hold about ourselves and about what is true in the world and what is possible. And I know this is cliche, but it's hitting home for me on deeper and deeper levels of some of those beliefs that you carry around that you think are yours actually aren't even yours. They were given to you by someone else, and you took them in, and you keep operating from that belief or that script on such a deep level that we don't even think about it until we spend the time to sort of excavate it and take it out and look at it and realize, oh, this is operating in the background, but I don't actually believe that about myself, or I don't want to have that belief be my operating system anymore. And so there's a cognitive level. Part of that is the emotional level, right? And I think of this as being very tied to nervous system regulation and whether we are coming from a place where we are grounded and can see accurately what's happening within us, what's happening without us, what's in our power, what isn't, what we can change. And also part of the emotional piece is like truly attuning to our emotions and moving grief, like opening our hearts to grief. Grief is here. We live in a world full of pain and violence and all sorts of things that cause grief. And too often we stuff it down. So when we talk about emotions, are we actually feeling our emotions? Are we moving energy so that it's not stuck in our body? Are we allowing ourselves to feel love or joy? Sometimes we think we are, but we actually have a much greater capacity for joy and happiness and love than we're allowing ourselves to feel. And so really working with our emotions and finding out how to work with them, how to walk with them, how to honor them and release them and let them rise and fall and come back again without feeling like they're going to overwhelm us or without allowing them to dictate our behavior or how we show up in our lives. So there's cognitive ways I think about it. There's sort of the emotional pieces. There's the physical body, right? There's so much. This is all of a lot of our medicine, right? Of what is going on in your physical body. And are there things that you need to adjust for the benefit of your physical body or more modalities that we need to use? And so some of that in more of a clinic setting is like, what are you eating? How much are you drinking? What are you drinking? How much are you moving? And for me, movement in a workshop or a retreat setting, movement is part of how we release things from our body, and also can be how we bring things in or anchor in beliefs or ideas or feelings. And so using movement to help us shift both the cognitive and the emotional pieces. And then the spiritual pieces. And spirituality is both, when I talk about it, both our relationship to something bigger than us, and whatever word you use for that or don't use for that, but also the sacredness of ourselves, like the spiritual, the divine, our divine selves, like seeing ourselves as sacred and spiritual beings. I love the quote, and I'm not going to get it right either because it's just in my head, but that we are spiritual beings going through a physical life, something like that, or in a physical body. But this idea that we are spiritual beings first and foremost, rather than physical beings with a spiritual part of us, that we are spiritual beings with a physical body navigating a physical world. But really, like, are we living in alignment with what we deeply desire? Are we connecting with the bigness and the magic of the world? Are we connecting with the magic of who we are? Many of us aren't. Many of us aren't. And so how do we bring all of these things together, right? As we work on healing, as we work on moving towards improved well-being, towards joy, towards an expansive, beautiful life, towards healthy bodies, we need to combine and integrate all of those things. We need to work on our thoughts and our beliefs. We need to connect to our spirituality. We need to honor the physical temple of our body and figure out what it needs in terms of additional healing, what it needs in terms of food, what it needs in terms of sleep, what it needs in terms of movement, what supplements or other things might benefit it. And that's more the work that I would do in a one-on-one setting, is really looking at how we're honoring and meeting the needs of our physical body. And then our spiritual paths. Are we connected to ourselves? And you may ask me, why do we need to do these things? Like, why do we need to take time out of our lives to remember and reconnect? And is it enough to do them a little at a time? And of course, a little at a time results in huge shifts over time. But I would argue that we live in a world where we are constantly being bombarded with messages about who we should be, how we should look, what we need to do to be worthy, right? That we need to keep working, we need to be productive. Medicine is a perfect example that my productivity as a physician is measured by these billable units, and that my worth is tied up in my productivity and tied up in how many patients I can see. Not necessarily always how well I can see them or how many I can see and stay well myself, but really a lot of focus on numbers. And that's true across a lot of, you know, workplaces. There's a productivity measurement, and you're not worthy if you're not meeting productivity measurements, when the truth is that we are worthy. And sometimes we have to say no to those measurements in order to protect what matters most, which is our health and our well-being. And so when we are constantly being bombarded by messages that pull us away from our true selves, that pull us away from our needs, that tell us we should be skinnier, we should be prettier, we should be younger, we should be wealthier, we should work harder, we should. It is an act of rebellion to come back to ourselves. And the only way to do it is by making it a practice day by day, and a practice where periodically we take bigger pieces of time and really more deeply connect to our bodies. And so I would invite you, as you go about your day, to think about in what ways do you daily connect to yourself? In what ways do you daily create healing spaces or healing rituals or habits that truly honor your body and its needs? And then thinking about, what does that look like over a quarter? Is there something you do every quarter that really nourishes you, that really helps you connect to yourself, that really helps you re-see your life? And what do you do every year? Is there something you do every year? Because retreats and workshops and things like that help us reconnect, and they often bring deep healing and joy. And we have such a need for joy in our everyday lives, in our culture, in our need to work, like cultivating and being with joy and being in spaces that really light you up are so important. So that's your homework, is to really think about what your daily practices are. And if there's some practice that you do on a regular basis, whether it's monthly or quarterly or yearly, to help you connect to yourself. And if not, what is something that you would like to do? Maybe you would like to take a workshop at a yoga studio every quarter, or maybe you would like to go on a bigger retreat once a year, or you would like to, whatever it is. So please feel free to comment and tell me what you're doing. I would love to hear. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.